A fiber-optic FPV drone flies trailing an ultra-thin wire behind it, unspooling as it moves. That wire is the reason it survives electronic warfare coverage that would blind almost anything else in the sky. The link carries no radio signal at all, so a jammer has nothing to jam. Russia fielded the first of these in Kursk Oblast in August 2024, according to CSIS defense analyst Samuel Bendett, and Ukraine has spent the years since catching up. A production version now flies on spools around 10 kilometers long, per defense publisher Janes, with tested cables stretching past 40. Years of engineering and enormous sums on both sides went into jammers designed to break a drone's radio link. This drone does not carry a radio link to break. An arms race built entirely around the radio spectrum now faces an opponent that has left the spectrum behind. For 3 years, the drone war in Ukraine has run on one repeating cycle. One side fields a new FPV, a small first-person view attack drone flown by an operator wearing video goggles. It works until the other side's jammers learn its frequency and blind it mid-flight. Then a new frequency, a new jammer, a new frequency again. Both sides have poured enormous sums into that cycle, and into ever more sophisticated electronic warfare, or EW, the practice of using radio signals to disable an enemy's electronics rather than a weapon to destroy them. The fiber-optic FPV sits outside that cycle entirely. In place of a radio link for both steering and video, it trails a physical strand of optical fiber back to its operator. Janes, the defense intelligence publisher, spells out the consequence. Because the link carries no radio emissions at all, the drone cannot be jammed, and radio direction finding cannot find the operator either, since nothing is being transmitted to trace. Russia was first to field the concept at scale. CSIS analyst Samuel Bendett dates the shift to August 2024, after Ukraine's cross-border incursion into Kursk Oblast. Russian fiber-optic drones there became, in Bendett's words, extremely successful in disrupting Ukrainian logistics and supply lines. The Washington Post, citing Rusai analyst Jack Watling, goes further. Those Kursk-era fiber-optic drones marked the first time since the full invasion began in 2022 that Russia had pulled ahead of Ukraine in frontline drone technology. Watling credits them as a factor in Ukraine's withdrawal from Kursk by March 2025. A Russian system called Knyaz Vandal, built by a Novgorod-based volunteer military technology group, began appearing in reporting around the same period. The name is now widely used in coverage of the war, though no major defense institution has independently confirmed who built it or exactly when, and it should be treated as claimed rather than settled. Ukraine did not stay behind for long. Through its Brave 1 defense technology accelerator, Ukraine had over a dozen domestic fiber-optic FPV models in front of senior officers by December 2024. And by early 2025, roughly 15 manufacturers were reported building them under that program. A figure repeated widely across Ukrainian defense industry, reporting that no major defense institution has independently audited. In January 2025, the 414th Unmanned Strike Systems Brigade, the Ukrainian unit nicknamed Magyar's Birds, reported a fiber-tethered FPV reaching 41 kilometers. Defense Express, the Ukrainian defense outlet that broke the story, called it the longest declared range for any wired FPV drone anywhere in the world at that time. By March 2025, a Lithuanian manufacturer called Baltic Viper was demonstrating a commercial fiber-optic FPV with a 10-kilometer spool at a European defense trade show. The concept had already jumped from wartime improvisation to a NATO-adjacent product line. What is at stake reaches past one airframe. An entire category of defense spending, jamming and counter-jamming, exists to fight a transmitter, and this drone does not carry one. A jammer needs a signal, which is the whole reason the fiber-optic drone works. A conventional FPV runs on two separate radio links. One carries the operator's steering commands up to the drone, typically on the 2.4 or 5.8 gigahertz bands. The other carries the drone's live camera feed back down to the operator's goggles. A jammer floods those same frequencies with noise until the real signal drowns and the drone loses its picture, loses control, or both. Some electronic warfare systems add GPS spoofing on top of that, feeding a drone false satellite navigation data to push it off course. Several defense outlets report, though no single authoritative source has pinned down the split, that most FPV strike drones are piloted by eye off the video feed in the final approach rather than by GPS. If that holds, the control link and the video link are what a jammer most needs to kill, not the satellite link. A fiber-optic drone removes both targets at once. In place of a radio transmitter and receiver, the drone carries a small optical transceiver, a device that converts electrical signals into pulses of light and back again. The ground station has the matching unit. Between them runs the fiber itself, spooled either on the drone or on a reel at the ground station, paying out as the drone moves away from its operator. Steering commands and video both ride that same strand as light instead of radio waves. There is no antenna to jam, because there is no antenna. Picture two soldiers in the same trench passing notes along a string strung between two tin cans, rather than shouting across open ground where anyone can listen in or drown them out. Noise cannot reach the tin can line because there is no open air for it to travel through. That range comes at a cost paid in weight. A spool of cable adds mass a radio drone never carries, which forces either a smaller warhead or a shorter flight time to compensate. The war zone confirms the trade-off exists, though no manufacturer publishes one standardized figure for it. The cable itself is not glass, but a flexible plastic optical fiber, tough enough to survive being dragged across rubble and tree lines. According to reporting on the drone's construction, though no defense institution has published an authoritative spec sheet. Commercial listings for similar cable put its width at well under a millimeter, sometimes close to the thickness of a human hair. A filmed Russian test, cited by defense journalist David Hambling, showed a 50-kilometer spool weighing under 4 kilograms, a figure that comes from a single filmed demonstration rather than a manufacturer specification. Strength is not the hard part. The hard part is getting thousands of meters of it to unspool cleanly in flight, the way line pays off a fishing reel under tension. A snag on a low branch or a collapsed roof does not jam the signal. It severs the wire, and the drone goes dead in the air exactly where that happens. That is the engineering fight manufacturers are having, not a lighter warhead, but a spool that never once catches. Cable lengths genuinely vary by source, and the honest picture is a band rather than one hero statistic. Janes documents a fielded commercial system running a 10-kilometer spool. Defense Express has reported a Ukrainian unit reaching 41 kilometers under test conditions, described at the time as a record claim rather than a routine capability. The war zone has separately reported spools tested out to 50 kilometers, again as a testing benchmark and not a fielded standard. The everyday fielded range sits somewhere in the 5 to 20 kilometer band, with tested extremes reaching toward 40 or 50. Any single number quoted on its own is almost always one specific unit's best claim rather than the operational norm. One limit belongs on the record. Fiber takes the control link and the video link out of a jammer's reach, and that is the whole of the claim. It does not remove every form of electronic attack, and stating the advantage any wider than that is how a documented engineering story turns into a rumor. RUSI analyst Jack Watling explains why militaries did not simply answer with a better jammer. There is no transmission left to detect, from the drone or from its operator. Russian forces have instead shifted toward combining direction finding, signals intelligence, and reconnaissance to physically locate a drone pilot's position. then striking that position with a fiber-optic drone or a glide bomb. Where fiber-optic control is in play, the contest stopped being electronic and became a hunt for the person holding the controller. The clearest documented case behind that shift sits in Kursk Oblast, where Russian fiber-optic drones helped cut Ukrainian resupply routes ahead of the March 2025 withdrawal already described. That is a named analyst's assessment of a messy, multi-factor retreat rather than an independently re-verified body count, and it should be read at that weight. Range creep into rear areas shows the trajectory most concretely. On October 6, 2025, the war zone documented a fiber-optic drone strike on Kramatorsk, roughly 19 kilometers behind the front line, hitting a truck near an apartment building. The strike was sourced to the Kramatorsk City Council and to Brave one official Andriy Hertseniuk. No casualty figures for that strike turned up in the sourcing used for this episode, and none should be assumed either way. A little over a year earlier, the technology was still confined to short-range trench fighting. By October 2025, it was reaching targets a jammer-based defense would never have had to plan for at that distance, because no radio-linked drone had the range to survive that far from its operator in contested electronic warfare airspace. One further case deserves a label rather than a flat statement. Defense Express reported that a Russian Ka-52 attack helicopter, an aircraft the outlet valued near $16 million, was brought down by a fiber-optic FPV drone in the Pokrovsk sector in March 2026. Credited to a Ukrainian crew from the 59th Assault Brigade's Unmanned Systems Unit. That is a single-source claim from one Ukrainian defense outlet. No second outlet has confirmed it, and no independent photograph-based lost database was found tagging fiber-optic drone kills as a distinct category the way it tracks destroyed tanks or aircraft generally. The claim is specific and plausible, and it is not confirmed. Most coverage of this war reports the strike of the week and moves on to the next one. The mechanism underneath, the reason this particular drone cannot be stopped the way every drone before it could, is worth 20 minutes rather than a headline, and subscribing is the easiest way to catch the next one when it is ready. What is confirmed, and confirmed institutionally rather than by either side's press office, is that nobody has found a working electronic answer. NATO's Allied Command Transformation ran its 16th Innovation Challenge specifically targeting the fiber-optic drone threat. An open acknowledgement from the alliance's own innovation arm that no fielded solution meets the problem yet. In August 2025, the United States Army published an assessment describing fiber-optic drones as a significant counter-drone challenge, an official institutional statement rather than a journalist's framing. Together, those two documents are the strongest evidence available that this is not marketing, because a NATO command and the U.S. Army do not open innovation programs against threats their own systems already beat. None of that makes the fiber-optic drone unstoppable, and the distinction matters. CSIS analyst Samuel Bendett has stated plainly that these drones can be stopped by physical countermeasures rather than necessarily by electronic warfare, and he points to something as basic as a shotgun. Reported field responses lean the same direction: anti-drone netting strung over roads and positions, barbed wire barriers rigged specifically to snag a trailing cable, and small arms fire aimed at the airframe itself rather than at a radio link that is not there to hit. None of that is jamming. It is a return to shooting the thing down, the way an army might have answered a slow-moving aircraft a century ago, because the fast, cheap, invisible electronic answer that has worked on every other drone in this war does not exist for this one. Cost figures for the drones themselves vary enormously across sources, from roughly $300 to over $1,200 depending on the outlet and the specific system. And no single defense institution has published an authoritative unit price. That spread is worth naming rather than smoothing over. What every source agrees on, whatever the exact number, is that fiber-optic control adds only a small amount to a weapon that was already cheap. Production scale tells the same story from another angle. The 414th Brigade has cited a planned batch of 1,100 drones and a production rate estimated near 1,000 units a month as of January 2025, according to Defense Express, the only outlet to report the figure. On the Russian side, reporting of mass production beginning across multiple regions in 2025 comes from specialist and general defense press rather than a major institution, and should be read the same way. Plausible in direction, unconfirmed in specifics. Neither figure has to be exact to make the point. Within about a year of its first battlefield appearance, this had stopped being a workshop project on either side of the front. Detection, where it is being attempted at all, has moved off the radio entirely. A fiber-optic drone still has to fly, so it still makes sound and still shows up on a thermal camera, even with nothing to intercept on the airwaves. Field reports describe acoustic sensors and infrared cameras as the direction militaries are exploring in place of ARF detection gear, though this remains an emerging response rather than a fielded proven counter, and no major defense institution has published results confirming it works reliably against a fast-moving target at range. The pattern here runs wider than one drone. Every FPV fight of this war so far has been decided in the radio spectrum, and whoever won the frequency fight owned the sky for a while. Fiber-optic control is the first weapon in this war that declines the contest altogether, and declining it has bought more than any upgrade inside the old fight ever did. Range is the first thing to watch from here. Fielded systems sit in the 5 to 20 kilometer band today, but the tested extremes past 40 show where manufacturers on both sides are pushing, and every added kilometer moves the safe rear area further back for whoever is defending against it. The target has shifted too, from the drone to the person flying it. Once the link cannot be jammed, Watling's analysis points to finding and striking the operator as the response that replaces jamming, a harder and more human problem than building a better jammer ever was. The last thing to watch is whether a real electronic counter ever appears. As of this episode, NATO's own innovation programs and the U.S. Army's own published assessments say it has not. None of this makes the fiber-optic drone a wonder weapon. It is slower, heavier, and shorter ranged than its radio-controlled cousins, and a single snagged cable can end its flight before a shot is fired at it. What it proved is narrower than the title's promise, and worth stating precisely rather than dramatically. It did not break every form of electronic warfare. It broke the one form built to attack a drone's radio link, the same link every counter-drone jammer in this war had been built to attack, until a plain wire made that whole fight beside the point. That trailing wire is what the entire design rests on, the first weapon of this war built on the assumption that the fight for the airwaves was never worth having in the first place. What replaces the wire, if anything does, is where this goes next.